going to jump into it. So I have my co-panelist joining me, Matt. I'll introduce him in a second, but I am so excited to talk to you all about this topic today. So I'll start by introducing myself and kind of set the stage for what we're going to talk about. I am on the strategy team here at Ironclad, and part of my job is to meet with customers, partners, our product team, understand what's in the space, and help come up with solutions that mean true value and help companies be more strategic. And so what I've done over the past couple of years is meet a lot with supply chain teams, procurement teams, even legal teams that own the buying process, and have worked with them to put together compelling products, solutions, services that are driving their businesses forward. And so what we've been chatting with customers a lot about lately is how do you stay proactive in the current environment? There's always things changing. There is a new geopolitical event. There is a new initiative to save more on our vendors. There's a merger or a reshuffling. How are you going to kind of handle that next event, stay proactive, and unlock opportunities within your contracts? So that is what we are going to talk about today. And Matt is the perfect partner for me to have that conversation. So Matt, what I'd love you to do is just introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about your background, because I think it's especially prevalent to today's topic.
Thanks, Toby. Yeah, hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So as Toby said, I'm Matt Beschny. I work on the solutions engineering team here at Ironclad, which is part of our customer outcomes organization. So, my whole focus is on working with customers and talking about how they can leverage all of the resources that Ironclad provides. I've been doing this type of role for the last 10 years or so, specifically in CLM software. And then actually prior to that, I was a category manager. So a lot of the insights and the perspective that I provide here, I definitely tap into my experience there, especially when it comes to things like third-party paper and negotiating with AI and tools along those lines, but also providing some of the experience over the last 10 years with implementations and customer architecture and things along those lines. So looking forward to showing you the product today, but Toby, I'll give it back to you.
Cool. Thank you. So our hope for today is to make this conversation as practical as possible and give you solutions that you can utilize whatever stage of the CLM journey you're on. Before we jump into the topic, I want to cover the few housekeeping items that we have. If you are watching this and saying, I would love to get a recording of this afterwards, we will automatically send that out. No worries. So after the event completes, we'll get the video ready and we'll send that out to all of the audience members. So you'll have that in your inbox shortly. In our current webinar environment, we are going to do our best to zoom in and show you the demos in full picture, but there are some steps you can take to just make sure your window is set up correctly. You can chat with us if you need some help there. There's a Q&A box for you to input any of your questions. We'll pause throughout and answer some of them, but we'll leave the majority of the questions to the end of our session where we will have time for more Q&A. So get familiar with the webinar tool. If you have any issues with video or audio, let our team know. Our team is standing by, and you can use the Q&A box to ask any questions that you have. Okay, that's enough housekeeping. Let's jump into the topic. So I want to set up the conversation here and start by leading us into our first demo where we're going to show you the Ironclad product and how you can utilize that for the topic of today's webinar. But I want to start by breaking it down into three subcategories. So the first topic will highlight a stage of CLM that you may be in, which is my contracts are all over the place. I have acquired a new company, or we've restructured, or we have a homegrown system. There's tons of different reasons why you might be in this stage, but you have your contracts and you want to establish a base layer understanding of what's in your contracts. You want to dedupe them. You want to clean it up and make sure you have a clean list of the vendors that you have contracts with currently. So there's this stage one, which is in order to leverage my contracts, in order to unlock the potential of my contracts and find maybe hidden savings within them, I first need to understand establish a base layer understanding of those contracts. So we'll start there. The next topic we'll go into is, all right, I have a base layer, and this might be the stage you're at. I understand a certain amount of my contracts. They're in one place, they're in a CLM, but now I'm in a very different state of mind. The world has changed, and I need to understand a different aspect of my contracts. So tariffs, big topic lately. Pandemics and global situations have happened over the last couple of years. Anytime there's a regulation change or an event in the world, I may need to adapt my understanding of the contracts. So maybe I collected a specific set of data at that point in time, but now I need a whole nother lens of data. I need a whole nother view of my contracts that I didn't program in. So the second topic will show you how you can leverage Ironclad to adapt your data structure. The third topic we'll get into is really where the proactiveness comes in. So from stage 1 and 2, where I'm deepening my understanding of contracts, really understanding what's in them, the process around them even, I can then now use that knowledge to make my process for contracts more proactive. And we'll focus a little bit on playbooks and how you can build playbooks to proactively manage your contracts moving forward. All of those topics that we cover are going to center around a couple of core tendencies of our product and of how we help customers today. And so those core tenets are, number one, AI. In all of our demos, we're going to show you AI. Everyone's talking about AI. It's going to be a mix of Gen AI and agentic AI. We're going to show you Gen AI that solves specific problems. And we're going to show you agentic AI that can solve a really wide range of problems. They're both super useful. Gen AI is great for repetitive motions or things that I have to do on a certain cadence, and I want it to perform that task really well. And then the agents and assistants are really great at augmenting all of my work and allowing me to kind of leverage a subset of tools for various different use cases. So we'll show you both examples throughout our demos. And the last thing I want to end on in this kind of prelude, this start of the conversation, is moving contracts from a step in the process that kind of gets in the way to leveraging the contract to mitigate risk, to find cost savings, to perpetuate our strategy. So hopefully by the end of today, through our demos, through our conversation, you see how you can better leverage contracts to propel your process forward instead of them as a kind of a check the box point in the process that slows you down. Okay, so leading into this first demo, I want to circle back to that first stage. And that is the stage where I need to establish a baseline understanding of contracts. Over 80% of prospects or companies that land on our doorstep and say, hey, I want to work with Ironclad to solve our contracting problem, start with that problem, which is my contracts are in different systems. They're all over the place. They're on desktops. I need to get them into one place, and I need to establish a baseline understanding of them. And again, we'll build on top of this as we go through today's conversation, but this is really step one. The last thing I want to say is it does not have to be as you're coming into Ironclad. You might be an existing Ironclad customer who, again, acquired another business, or you changed your internal structure, or you had 3 CLMs in place and you're moving to 1. There's tons of events that mean I have to ingest and establish data for a subset of contracts. Gartner calls this contract digitization. And so that is where I wanted to start. Matt, before you jump into the demo, anything to add, anything that's necessary for kind of a precursor before we jump into this?
No, I think you covered it really well. I would just kind of reiterate the point that this is the first phase, right? It's going from what I like to say is chaos to order, where you have documents all over the place. I still hear every day that people have files, so and so left the company, and there were files that were literally just on their local drives. So this is a super important step, that contract digitization, and how you go about that is usually a very manual process. So we're going to show you how we can do that a lot better and more efficiently.
Cool. I'll hand it over to you to jump into the demo.
All right, time for screen share. So, folks, as you see me looking to the left, it's because I'm looking at you, but our team will be tracking, Q&A as we go throughout. So, questions we don't answer as we're going through, we can certainly circle back to. But let's start with this view in Ironclad. So, one of the things that I find when I'm talking to customers and prospects alike, but in particular people who are evaluating their CLM, is everyone wants at some level some analytics, some intelligence from their database. The challenge is that in order to get information like this, most solutions either require a very hefty, expensive, time-consuming project of tagging all of the metadata in the system, capturing all of the information, which is largely done manually with resources that may take hours per contract in order to capture this sort of information to get to this point. And many companies I work with, especially in the past before I had access to these tools, resigned themselves to just kind of starting from zero, doing a flat file import, and then going forward with intelligence on all of their new contracts. But Ironclad can do something better for you here. So we're on the Insights tab here at the top. Where we're going to go is to the Imports tab. Now, everything in the database, you may or may not know, is based on permission. So what I'm about to do is not necessarily something you'll provision every user to do. But when it comes to the project of bringing files into the database, we have this capability called Smart Import, which in the Imports tab will be found under this Upload Records button in the upper right. When I click this, it defaults to Smart Import because that's the logical thing that you might want to do. But a quick little level set. Pretty much every serviceable database is going to give you some ability to import files in some magnitude into your database. They will oftentimes rely on OCR, or optical character recognition, and call that AI as a way to capture information with little to no touch. But Ironclad can do something better for you. So with Smart Import, not only are we going to do those core steps of bringing the files into the system and OCRing all of the information, but Smart Import's going to go a step further. So we'll go ahead and select a subset of files here. As you can see, some Word docs, some executed PDFs, so we can take in mixed file types. A couple of handy things that I can do at the bottom of the page here. I often recommend importing by record type. So this is just one less step of categorization in the system, plus your permissions around record type access, or how you can ensure certain types of contracts aren't visible to other users in the system. And then I oftentimes will select this checkbox to use the file name as the record name, because when you don't have a database yet, the closest naming convention you may have is in the file names themselves. So we'll go ahead and leave it at imported and select the file name. And then I'm going to click the import button here at the bottom of the page, and Ironclad's going to get to work. And as you can see, it makes short work of this task. You can bring in as many as 2,000 contracts at a time with this capability. And of course, the more files you feed it, the longer it may take. But when you see what this can do, you'll recognize just how fast and efficient this approach to populating your database is. As we see, we've got all of the records in here. So we have these repository items created, but the AI is still at work capturing the various pieces of information that are found in these. Our Smart Import AI has 194 out-of-the-box properties, or things that it detects. Things like common contract features, as well as commonly used clauses. 175 of those are actually commonly used clauses that you're probably looking for in your agreements every day, like limitation of liability, indemnification, termination rights, things along those lines. So it's going through and actually capturing all of this information. And it's not just a few fields that it's capturing. If we look at the ones it's completed, it's actually found all kinds of information. Now, it doesn't necessarily find everything because it may not be present in that agreement, but you can go through and see what AI has captured and populated in your database. And it continues to work as I interact with this. So once there's one that's going to pop up here with Pacific Northwest. That's the one I wanted to grab. This is a great example of just how strong this detection capability is. So if I select that record here, what you'll notice is that I have imported a scanned, wrinkly, water or coffee stained document into the system. Our OCR had no problem with that. That I would think of as table stakes, basic capabilities here, but it's not just that. It's also able to detect things like handwritten text. So it got the correct agreement date, but it recognized there are other dates that could be considered that piece of information and presented that to me on the right-hand side. I really just wanted to click on that to show you that this is able to ingest really messy documents and still capture and categorize all of the information that may be important for you, like the agreement date, like the counterparty details, like name, address, who signed this, and also the usage of certain provisions, like, what was the governing law captured in this? This is metadata that we report on in the system. So this is how you can go from zero to insights using smart import to quickly gather information that's going to be mission critical for getting the most out of your database. I think of this as day one AI capabilities that you can leverage, because none of this that I just did required special training before you use it. You can start using this right away. Now, when it finishes doing that import, it will also generate some on-the-fly insights. So we have some basic information here that it's captured based on the types of records. Now I uploaded an array of different types of contracts, so it extrapolated what was logical here. And then all of this information that's captured, all of this metadata here is now available in the database, where we find that is in the dashboard here for folks who haven't seen Ironclad yet. This is where we'll be able to see in the repository all of those imported records, and all of the data that was captured is now searchable and sortable and reportable in the database. So let's pause there, because that's kind of the workflow, the process that I see customers being able to leverage in order to get a really useful repository right out of the gates.
Yeah, and Matt, before you take away the screen share, one thing I want to highlight there is the status. We've showed you some data it can collect, but our smart import tool can assign a status to the contract. So the way it does that is it's looking at the contract to understand if there's a renewal clause. And so if the contract says this is auto renewing on this date, now it will assign a status, or there, whether it says there's no specific renewal clause, but this is the expiration date, it'll say expiring 136 days from now. So this is just one example of kind of ways that our import tool, or what Gartner calls contract digitization, works to establish that baseline. When you are incorporating these contracts, now you have an understanding of what renewals are upcoming. That's usually one question that is always asked. But you also have an analysis of the terms and conditions across all of these vendor contracts. So just wanted to highlight that before you jumped out of screen share. As I said before, use the Q&A box if you have any product-related questions. We'll answer them as we go, but we also have time later on for the Q&A section. So this next phase that I wanted to talk about after this is when, after I've established that baseline understanding of my contracts, that data layer, things are going to change over time. So tariffs, right? Huge topic at the moment as of late. And maybe tariffs is not something that you collected when those contracts were being executed and negotiated. As it goes through an Ironclad workflow or whatever process you have, maybe you didn't tag it with the tariff-related information that you need. So what we're going to show you next is how you leverage Ironclad to adapt that over time. I want to talk about all the different scenarios in which you may use that. It can be super simple, like, okay, we've been using a tool for a while, and now I just need to reestablish how my data is structured. Or it can be because of an event. Regulation changes are a big one. DORA, GDPR, Cloud Act. There's tons of different things, regulation changes, that now I have to look at my contracts in a different way. All of these situations, kind of the Achilles heel of other tools, is when you have a rigid system in place, when you have something that's hard to be, that's not easy for it to be agile, you're kind of stuck with the data that you have. So the next thing we're going to get into here is how you can leverage custom AI and always on AI to extract data from your contracts at any point in time. I'll explain this conceptually. If I have now a need to go understand if our contracts have a tariff-related clause, I can go in Ironclad and I can set up a custom AI property. There are properties that we have in an Ironclad that are yes, no. And so I can train our AI to answer a question on each contract. Does this contract have a tariff-related clause? And does it stipulate XYZ? I've trained the AI to go answer that question. And now with a click of a button, I can run that question across thousands of contracts. So instead of me having to go and read every single contract, instead of me having to run a search and try to answer that question based on the search results, I can set up a custom property to go and answer a specific question or extract a specific piece of data or extract a specific clause on every single contract in my repository. We have both custom properties and custom clauses. And so two different ways that you can train AI to find what you're looking for and then extract it on a per contract basis. The last part of this is, since it's structured data, now I can run a report. So it's not just answering the question for myself. I now have structured data that we can go run reports on. Okay, I wanted to set that up and conceptually explain it. Matt is probably going to do a much better job of explaining it during the demo, but I'll let you take it away and go into our second demo we have.
Sure thing. And yeah, you don't give yourself enough credit. Obviously, Toby knows this stuff incredibly well. So yeah, kind of picking up for where we left off, there's two things to consider here based on what Toby was talking about. Number one, there's the nuances of everyone's business, right? We've got all of these properties and they cover a broad swath of the kinds of things that you are likely already looking for. We hit a lot of the common items, but every now and then we do run into customers, maybe often, where there's one or two additional items that they need to capture, whether it's a property or a metadata field, like the record type or some of these other items that we have here. Whether it's one of those particular items or it's a clause, the actual terminology in the agreement. We have thought about this and we offer you a way to be able to incorporate that. Now, that's not just when we do smart import. So for any sort of information that we capture in the system, one of the things that I can do is select records from my repository and I can run AI. So this is like Toby was talking about. This is kind of that live AI capability. So if I create new properties, since I've imported these records, and then I want to go back and run that against it, Run AI is right here for us. So wanted to connect that. We'll come back to, excuse me, we'll come back to this in a moment, but let's go under the hood a little bit. Sorry about that. So we want to go into company settings. This isn't necessarily a capability everyone in the database is going to do, but for authorized users, we have a couple of areas that are going to be helpful. The first and foremost is AI clauses. What we see here are the clauses, the ones that say provider Ironclad here on the right-hand side are those out-of-the-box provisions, all those out-of-the-box clauses. Now, for any one of these, I can select the clause and further tune it, right? I can add to the description, which is signaling to the AI, this is what this means to my business. A lot of organizations may grab this sort of insight from their pre-built playbooks or their internal team guidance on what is our approach to these things and what are we looking for, because you may be looking for more than just the specific reference to governing law, but also things like venue or something along those lines. And you could either have that as a separate clause or enjoined with governing law, depending on how you position that. Further, you can add examples. So you can upload, you can grab from other agreements, you can upload up to 20 additional examples, but you do not have to provide an example. I've decided to provide one here already, but you can provide additional examples to further tune, further refine the way the AI is looking for these sorts of things. And then you can also look for different levels of matching. So let's say that I'm looking for anything that really just kind of hints at governing law. By default, it's highly similar. If I want to be really strict, I can set that to exact match. But this just on the out of the box clauses gives you a lot of fine tuning in how you reference those positions. And then in the situation where you need to create a net new clause, I've done that for certain positions here, which is why you see my company as the provider. But creating a new clause is as simple as giving it a name, providing that description, and then choosing whether or not to provide examples. And once you have those examples, you can, once you have the name and the description, you can then tune those checkboxes we were just looking at in terms of how specific do we want it to be to find that language. So super easy to add a clause, especially ones that are there for nuanced businesses like health and life sciences, financial services, really any industry that has a lot of extra regulations tends to do this. And as Toby said, we're hearing a lot of tariff sort of situations, right? People want to see if there's sorts of material impacts. So you may describe in here that you're looking for anything referencing materials for like manufacturing or something like that are imported, and you may be looking for those sorts of words in order to detect these sorts of positions. Now that's the clause version of this. Under Data Manager on the left-hand side, we can also look at properties, or again, the metadata fields that are specific pieces of information you may use to filter and sort the database. We have an array of positions that are already AI enabled. As I talked about, we have several out-of-the-box properties like the counterparty details and agreement details that Smart Import captured. But then you can create additional ones as well. They don't all have to be AI tuned, it's just certain ones. But let's say that I want to look for things like rebate amounts, right? I come from a procurement background, so I'm always looking at, are we getting the most out of our agreements? And there's a lot of different types of, price and rebate version, volume discounts, things like that. But what I've done is I've created a custom property, excuse me, again with the button in the upper right. And then in this custom property, I provide a description that's basically just communicating internally with users who are looking at this property. But what's most important is if I scroll down to the AI detection piece, about right near the bottom, and I click this little pencil here, what that's going to do is that's going to give me the opportunity to fine tune the AI. Now, it does not require in this situation that you provide a whole bunch of examples of a property just for the AI to understand it. What's great about this discrete type of AI is that you can explain this the way that you would explain this to another member of your team, right? A member of the legal team or the procurement team, or oftentimes this is how you describe things in the playbooks. But this is the direction you're giving the AI. Now you can go further by providing examples and telling it where you want it to find those things, or even something we call ground truth, like this is the data point within this text that is most important to us. And then you can also tell it where you want to look, right? For rebates, I specifically want to try and find this property in tables, not just in the clauses or raw text in there, but where I find this in tables is where I'm looking to detect this sort of stuff, which I'm sure people will get excited about the table detection or detecting things in tables, but also just refining where I go to look for that. And again, once I make those changes and tune the AI for that, I can go back to my dashboard, select the records that I'd like to update, and run AI against this, which will then go and recapture all of that information in the database and tag that. That's now stuff I can use to filter my views at the top of the page, or even, as we'll see in the next step, use that as filters to pull into our conversational AI. So let's pause there. Toby, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, again, before you jump out of screen share here, if you go back to the custom properties, I just want to run through a list of some examples that I've chatted directly with customers about, but also at a lot of trade shows we've kind of set up demos and worked with customers on as well. So cost savings, right? This is a huge bucket. But there are a lot of cost savings opportunities that may be just trapped in your contracts today. Rebates is one example that you just saw there, but SLAs are a huge portion of this also, and extracting SLA data so you have a record of that. We have something that we won't get too far into today that is obligations. And so this data can be structured in either properties or obligations. But what an obligation allows you to do is assign out a task essentially for someone to go and check that rebate opportunity or SLA opportunity, or there's volume-based discounts that my master agreement may say after a certain quantity, I can recoup these costs. That's something you want to tag, you want to structure that data, and then assign out a task for someone to go and check on that data and revisit it to make sure that opportunity is investigated and we've either taken advantage of it or marked it as complete and said, okay, that's not something that I can take advantage of. So there's tons of opportunities Again, the premise here is that you can use custom AI to extract data in a structured way, and then you can use obligations or workflows or different processes to follow up on those opportunities. Renewals is the example everyone's going to talk about, right? You want to make sure the auto renewals or renewal information is captured. That's by default. But there's many other situations here to put in and leverage our custom AI for. Okay, cool. The questions are starting to come in. I'll actually address one of them now within this topic before we move forward. And then some of the other ones I'm going to address over time. Matt, Michelle asked if we're importing a significant amount of contracts, it seems I'd need to review the AI, the OCR pulled for each one to ensure that the information is pulling correctly. How can I trust that the data is accurate so I don't have to check each one? I'll let you start off, but I also wanted to add some thoughts to that.
Yeah, I'd say the simple answer is, anytime you're doing a database import, whether it's just a strict, pattern matching through like a MuleSoft tool or something like that, where you're normalizing this field matches to that field, you always want to do a small test sample, right? Here's a couple examples of contracts of this type. Give it to Smart Import in this case, and then see how the results come out. What I've found is I do this often with customer examples. These are obviously, not customer examples we're looking at today, but I do this often with those, and I do see really high accuracy rating there. But that's what the short answer there is: take a subset, proof the work that the AI is doing, because that may inform whether or not you go back to the custom AI clause and provide some examples and say, hey, this is what this looks like in our agreements. That's the reason for that ability to fine tune. You may say, hey, I don't have a property for this, and I realized it only upon this test import. I want to go ahead and create a custom AI property so that we're capturing that on the outset. Once you do that and you see the confidence, you see the accuracy there, that's when you take the next step and start putting in bulk items. So I always recommend start small, review the work, confirm you're confident with it. I've seen great results and great feedback from customers who have tested this in trial and seen that our AI is capable of identifying all kinds of wonderful stuff there. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and in-app also, any field that is detected by AI will have a little green symbol next to it, and it will note it in the system. So any user of the CLM that's going and using that data for reporting, for different searches, will note the difference between a piece of data that was captured via a workflow or imported directly versus something that the AI detected. And then as an admin, when you do verify it, if you wanted to go through a verification process, you can verify in bulk. And so you can look at the table format and understand if this looks accurate and verify in bulk, or you can step through. We have both options. But you can then control whether it's verified or not. And again, that gives a signal to the end users to say, someone's validated this data. I can utilize it in this method. So we have different ways to view and classify data that's AI extracted and verified as a helpful point. And then I just want to double down on the custom AI. So we see everybody's contracts are unique and has a different flavor, maybe a region. I was talking to a customer the other day about COLA, cost of living clauses for them in Canada are written in a specific way and have specific data types. And so we used custom clauses to give it a few samples, and then it was able to detect COLA clauses for that region much more successfully than it was before. So the custom, the training, plus a couple other tools, we've done this for thousands of customers at this point, and we also have professional services that can kind of guide you and coach you through this process to get the best results. Okay, the other question I wanted to just answer quickly here before we move on to the last demo, which I'm super excited about, is can AI pull from comments in the workflows or only the contracts? And so I'll answer that directly, and then Matt, if you have anything to add. Everything we showed you is going through the documents in your repository. Those can be contracts, those can be DPAs, those can be SOC reports, those can be like it can be contracts and the ancillary documents that surround your documents. What we showed you here is not going through workflow comments or anything besides the actual documents. But I think as you see our last demo, which is AI assistance, and we can talk a little bit about the direction we're going, we plan to make it so that AI is used to sort through documents and the contextual data around the documents as well. Matt, anything to add there? Totally okay.
No, I think you nailed it there.
Cool. Okay. So I want to transition into this last point, and thank you so much for the Q&A. Keep it coming. We will have more time at the end here to address them further. Okay. So everything we've shown you up until this point is generative AI. It's baked into our Ironclad platform. It is there to perform specific tasks or answer specific problems. And it's highly customizable. It is there for you to train and alter and tailor to your specific needs. What I want to show you is the other end of our AI suite, which is an AI assistant and AI agents. And so we're going to start with one example here, but I want to start by setting this up to say, this is an AI assistant that can handle tons of different tasks related to contracts. It can translate, it can summarize, it can draft policies, it can do legal research. We don't have the time to go through every single use case. So we're going to center in on one. Matt, I love you brought this to the group when we were planning this webinar with this idea of utilizing past contracts to be more proactive. Before we jump into it, set this up for us for a little bit. How have you worked with clients to deploy this solution?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that as we're moving into the project phase of any sort of CLM, it is important to think about the phases of your CLM maturity, right? That's something we talk a lot about, right? So what we showed you first was phase one, going from chaos to order, getting that stuff tagged in the system. Now we've shown you how to maintain that system with custom AI tuning and things along those lines. The next step is to start using that insight, using that information in the system to drive your go forward process. I run into lots of companies that want a playbook but don't have a playbook. So what we can look at here is ways that we can use the repository and some of those kind of golden contract examples to build a better playbook to negotiate faster, more effectively in the go forward. So looking back to help how you move forward. And with that, I think I'll grab the screen. Sorry, Toby, was there something else?
No, I was going to lead you in. Take it away.
All right, let's do this. So let's go back to where I'm actually bringing us back to Smart Import real fast. Toby mentioned a couple of these things, the difference between a standard data, kind of a proof point of data, because I chose imported when I imported it, right? That's an item I've effectively proofed. But the AI items are these green ones. Now will show up both in the repository and in this Smart Import view. And you can convert these imports to views. So as Toby said, you can handle the information, do things like mass updates. So just kind of wanted to close the loop visually on that. But where we're going to go now is to Jurist. So Jurist is this AI assistant, conversational AI assistant that you can access at the top of just about any page in Ironclad. What this does is this opens up what we call a project. On the right-hand side, we have the project space where documents will show up, whether we're asking Jurist to create the document or we're uploading a document to interact with it. We're actually going to see both of those here in just a moment. And then on the left-hand side, we have our chat box here where we're actually interacting with the project, or I'm sorry, interacting with Jurist. And then we'll see filling in here the conversation history and our interactions with it, including the logic for the AI. So that's just a super quick, super simple overview of this. There's so much more we can talk about, like with precedent documents and how you can leverage those with the AI. But what I want to focus on is what we were just talking about, which is looking back at things like your repository. So any of the metadata that we've captured here, this is where run AI against those custom properties can be so valuable. Because if I wanted to look for agreements that had something like a termination position in there, not just the presence of a termination clause or something like that, but actual specific language. Did we detect determination for convenience in here? That's something I might want to filter in the database. So I can select that and filter through my database to find specific positions. Another really common example would be I want to look for agreements of a certain type, like say a master services agreement. And then I have some really good golden examples from a couple of partners I work with often, like Sedona and Potrero. So I can select these and then select the files that are in there. And you'll notice that it's more than just one file. It's not just the executed file, but there are other additional attachments on these records that may be material for this prompt. But I can select items from the repository. So that smart import capability, creating all that metadata, makes it easier for me to find stuff to pull into a Jurist project. And then once it's uploaded those items, I can type in a prompt. So especially if you have experience prompting, a lot of us do, if you're using it every day, you can just start typing in prompts. But a lot of times what we're asking jurists to do are pretty heavy things, right? So rather than write a prompt every single time, especially if it's a long one, or copy and paste it from another document, what we give you is a prompt library. This is where I can select from several out-of-the-box prompts. Ironclad actually provides a lot of these out-of-the-box capabilities, like generate playbooks, which is the one we're about to use. You can also create your own and keep those private to yourself. Or if you like it and you want to share it with others, you can check a box on that prompt and share that in company here. So real quick, really easy to generate and share. Quick little snippet while I pull this one up. Oftentimes when I'm doing something I don't already have a prompt for, I will start a new project and ask Jurist to help me write the prompt. But what we'll do now is we'll take this prompt as is. This is the out-of-the-box version of it. I can interact with this. So oftentimes you'll see things in brackets like this, where I'm calling out the specific companies. I could do that here with Sedona and Potrero. So we'll just edit a couple of those things here because those are the contracts we pulled in. You can be more specific throughout. But what I want to do is set it to task in building a playbook. What this prompt is designed to do, you can actually look through the hash markup that we had in that prompt, actually creates format in the prompt down here that helps Jurist understand it. And I can work with Jurist to kind of create formatted prompts for me. But then I can give it instructions in the prompt on how to identify things and what I'm looking for. So as you see, this isn't something I want to type every time. Selecting it from the library makes it really easy to do this task. But the big thing about this is that Jurist is going to take the task on, starting with the first agent. So this is a multi-agentic model, meaning we have multiple different purpose-built agents that are going to do different tasks. The first one is, of course, the manager agent, which clearly identifies that it's going to be assigning the next task to the reading agent, which is going to go through. It's actually going to read all of these contracts in short order and then start producing a playbook document that would identify the core positions in these executed agreements, because I have effectively indicated that these are golden contracts. I like the positions in these documents. So that's why I've chosen these ones to build the prompt now, to build the playbook. Now, as it's kind of running on the project, everything that's happening here, I get little status updates on the project. You can actually queue up multiple projects, right? And then interact with them, or step away and get a cup of coffee and come back. And now you have a pristine playbook that you can start working with. But you can see what it's doing all along here, as well as in this box. This is literally the black box giving you the logic that the agent is the agent is using as it goes through the process of taking in the tasks that you've given it. So in this case, building that playbook. So the reading agent's actually moving forward. And then once it's done scanning these 10 documents and coming up with the common positions, it will then pass that work on to the drafting agent, which will build my new playbook document. So we'll give that just a quick moment here. Actually, this might be a good opportunity while this is running. I know we've got several AI related questions. This should only take another 30 seconds or so, but when you're on a webinar, 30 seconds feels like an eternity. So maybe while this is finishing up, I'll leave the screen share up and maybe we can tackle a question or two.
Yeah, for sure. There are a couple in here. Let me just look. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong filter here. We answered that one. Okay, this is actually not an AI related question, but Lynette wanted to answer yours. Can I link any add-ons to a main renewal so when the renewal comes around again, I can see what contracts are related and I'd expect to see in the next renewal? Yes, as a big blanket statement, you can connect contracts together in different hierarchies. So parent-child relationships, you can add ancillary documents. With Ironclad, we keep all of that housed together in something we call a workflow. And that workflow is in perpetuity. So the next renewal comes around, it feeds off the first workflow and links. So yes, we can reach out to the team and demonstrate that a little bit better, but just as a short answer, yes. And I've perfectly taken up the time, so we'll hand it back to see what Juris produced.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. This, like I said, didn't need that much time to do it. And when you consider the magnitude of the task, reading 10 full executed MSAs and understanding the position, the core position, and then creating the fallbacks, that's really powerful, high level stuff that would take a person likely several hours to really parse out between all those documents and kind of comparing positions and things like that. What we've done now is we've created for core positions that exist across these documents, we've created a preferred position. It's calling the positions out in Sedona and Potrero because we may have slight differences there, but it's also recognized what the fallback positions are. And now I have a playbook, I have a working document that I can interact with. And part of what makes Jurist special is that Jurist provides a document editor, what I like to generally refer to as document handling. So not only are we uploading documents that we can, by the way, if it's an executed PDF, right, we could potentially download it in Word or convert it to Word and interact with that. Or in this case on the playbook, I might want to refine this a little bit further. So maybe I want to see where this exists in a document, or I just want to apply my company's position to this or my insights as a professional. What I can do is I can highlight this section and edit with input. What this does is this gives me an opportunity to prompt the AI on a specific section of the document, whether you're doing that to generate, say, bespoke red lines, or in this case, modify your playbook position. You can prompt the AI to say, create a more robust position here that looks at X, Y, and Z. So that's one capability that we have here. But I can also just directly edit on the document, right? By default, track changes are turned on. So if I start typing in here, right, I'm getting red lines. So if this was a contract that we were redlining with a counterparty, this is where I could interact with these sorts of things. If I wanted to, let's just undo those two changes. And I'm modifying a playbook and I don't want to track those changes. What I might do is just turn this off, and then I might start typing additional context in here in order to build and populate this playbook. But as you can see, it gets you to that task really fast, really efficiently. And that's a heavy project to ask Jurist to take on. And as Toby said, we don't have time to go into all of the multitudes of things that Jurist can do, but a couple of really common examples, especially for this audience, that I might call out. Something that I used to do oftentimes was try and create an obligations summary, which is going to extract all of the different obligations that we find in those agreements. This is, again, actually, I should put it over here. We have an obligations prompt out of the box. So this is a day one capability you can leverage. Another one that I like to create is a project summary. So many of the contracts that I would procure contracts that I would work on in procurement were related to a bigger project. And the PMO needed some sort of gist or summary of the things that we can rely on this contractor, this partner or provider to generate. So that's another example that can be really useful. And then, of course, redlining against a playbook. We've just created a playbook here. So what you could do is use an agreement playbook redliner, is what I call my version of this, where you upload your playbook and a contract, and then ask Jurist to redline that to conform. So this is a really common use case when you have a tight time frame. Hey, we just got this. We need to review this really quick and then make sure that it conforms with our position so that we can get this signed by 5 o'clock today. Well, that's a heavy task. It might put a lot of things aside. You can actually task Jurist with the playbook, your standard positions, and the contract in focus and say, hey, review this, compare these two things, and make sure that this contract conforms. You can even ask it to do things like summarize those changes in an email if you need to send that back to a partner in the organization and say, hey, give me a concise summary of all of the changes in here so that we can consider this as a company and be very agile with our position. So this is where, again, we, looking forward, can leverage the insights from the database and use that on a go forward basis in situations like a playbook, but also many other capabilities. So I know we've got several questions to cover, so I'll stop the screen share here. Hopefully you see some of this power, and yeah, let's jump to Q&A. I'll leave the screen up for now, in case we want to look at something based on the questions.
Yeah, for sure. So the one thing, as questions come in, so we have about 10 minutes left here. I encourage everybody to put any final Q&As in the chat, and we'll get them answered. So I've been at Ironclad for 4 years. Years ago, we went to a lot of procurement events, and we showed AI redlining and AI negotiation. And the first question always as a response was, "This is awesome. Do I have to set this up?" And back then, yeah, you had to set up a playbook. You had to configure in Ironclad how to do that. And you can still do that. And there's a perfect use case for doing that. But our AI assistant allows you to kind of hit the ground running with really detailed and customized red lines with little to no setup whatsoever. It can do customized risk analysis as well with little to no setup. So if it's as easy as just writing out a couple bullet points or a couple paragraphs and saving that prompt to tell Jurist how you want it to tackle a risk assessment, extracting data, summarizing a document. You can even say things like, "Summarize this for my head of IT," and Jurist is smart enough to understand how to build that summary for that specific persona. Okay, I want to just check the Q&A. I'm not seeing any.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Toby,
go
while
ahead.
you're doing that, I think one thing I just want to add to that comment, we haven't really leveraged that here with what we just showed. But one of the things about a conversational AI, well, a couple things to call out. One, I can continue interacting with this, right? I've got the playbook. I can continue providing instructions, and everything in this project is relevant to the project. So I don't have to restate things in order to continue doing it. I can continue prompting it. One of the things that I will often continue prompting it with is tone. Right, it understands, because this is a LLM and it's intelligent with these requests. I could say in that summary email, make that really concise and soften the tone for the benefit of the counterparty so that they feel like we're being collaborative. I might give Jurist that instruction and it'll completely redraft the message that makes the tone, it kind of does it in that way. It saves me a ton of time just in terms of trying to redraft that email myself, but also kind of goes to that discrete capability of a conversational AI that understands those sorts of things like tone, positioning, point of view. Those are all things you can provide in a prompt.
Yeah, and we had a great question come in. I'm just reading through those, which is, can I assume that what you're showing me on procurement here works on the sales side as well? Everything we showed you today, Jurist, Custom AI, Smart Import, is contract agnostic. We try really hard when we're building solutions for those solutions to work regardless of the contract you put forward, whether it's a standard short NDA or a really dense, customized, super tailored partner agreement that has lots of different pages attached to it. Both of those can go through Ironclad. So different lengths, different PDFs and Word, whether it's a sell side contract or a procurement contract, we are contract agnostic. We can handle all of those. So great question. Okay, we are, there's one other in here which was asking if the AI can detect changes in the agreement. And I'll answer that at a high level, but acknowledge that we might need to take that offline and answer your specific use case a little bit more detailed. Jurist can take two documents and compare those documents and understand and summarize what has changed. So if something moves from one section to another section, Jurist will be able to highlight and summarize that change. There are a couple other ways that we can handle it or detect changes in documents. So I'll give a simple answer and just say we'd love to follow up and dig deeper on that one. Okay.
That is a good example, though, of what you might want to ask jurists to summarize. So a really common use case may be, I want to first serve to jurist a contract that I wanted to evaluate for risk and maybe make recommendations on edits to the contract, whether those recommendations come from the playbook or built into the prompt. I can then put those into action, but I'm asking jurists to redline multiple different positions, and I don't want to go back and read all of those things to figure it out. So I might ask jurists to create a summary of changes made, whether those changes are between the last version I sent them and the version they just sent me, or the version that I just modified, and I want to summarize that to share with a colleague or a counterparty. So that's a really great example of that summarization capability, and that one comes up a lot when I'm talking to customers and prospects around things you can use AI for.
Amazing. Okay, with that, I will summarize and plug our couple of reports that we've just produced. So if you haven't seen it, we just published a state of AI in legal for those that are on the phone that cover that area. We also have a 2025 contracting benchmark report that helps us understand what the state of contracts are today. And as a sneak peek, although I don't know if my team will get mad at me for saying, we're working on a procurement specific state of AI as well. So lots of great content coming out. The other plug I will put here is that we love getting customers and prospects to try out the tools that we just showed you. So reach out to the Ironclad team. We're happy to put you in a sandbox and a trial and get you to experience these AI solutions directly yourself. And finally, I will just say it was a pleasure to be able to walk through these different demos with you today. Thank you for giving us an hour of your busy schedule. We'll wrap up there and answer any lingering questions in the chat so that you have a minute or two break between your next meeting. But Matt, thank you very, very much for everything you demoed. And thank you, team. Again, there's a couple of questions coming in last minute here that we'll answer via chat. But thank you all very much for attending our webinar today.